Let's start. And today our guest in our club's member to member, our very bright member, our member from the Russia. She joined International Society for the History of Medicine already in 1991, and I am talking about the Professor Tatiana Sorokina. So congratulations, Professor Sorokina.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, I would like to remind that Professor Sorokina is working in the People Friendship University in Moscow. She is really very powerful professor and very influential to the whole Russia area, and even, let's say, in many Eastern European countries, because, for example, her book History of Medicine has already 14 editions. And to be honest, I remember I was a student when the Professor Sorokina first time appears in our museum and have looked for illustration for the first edition. Now this, okay, first edition was more like a brochure, such heavy, but brochure. Now it's a book with CDs in not only in Russian, but also in English. So congratulations for that. Today, Professor Sorokina very kindly agreed to be a speaker on our club for half an hour, 35-minute lecture. And her topic today will be Nicolay Pirogov and the Russian priorities of the Crimean War. The topic is quite interesting. Thank you, Joel. You already communicated with me. I sent an interesting article about the Pirogov. It's not only the priority of Professor Sorokina. Many people study this topic, and I'm sure the lecture will be interesting because, Professor, you have already attracted 46 online participants. So may I ask you to share your screen, your presentation, and let's start.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. And full screen.
Can you see?
Very good. So we are listening very carefully. We mute our microphones except of Professor Sorokina, and we'll ask questions and we'll have discussion at the end of the lecture.
Dear colleagues, dear friends, dear Professor Yuri Salaks, it is an honor and a great pleasure to present you a lecture on the Russian history of medicine in member-to-member spring session in the frame of the 47th Congress of International Society for the History of Medicine. My topic is Nicolay Pirogov and the Russian priorities in the Crimean War. Nicolay Pirogov was born in Moscow, the 13th child in family. He graduated from Moscow University Medical Faculty. Then he graduated from Professors Institute in Tartu University. At that time, it was dubbed. Then 2 years in Europe, and when he came back to Russia, he worked in St. Petersburg. He made a lot for introduction of narcosis. And he was among the first Russians who used ether narcosis in January 1847. He worked out a device for administration of narcosis, and he was the first to use ether narcosis at the battlefield. It was in Old Salty in 1847. And when Sir James Simpson offered chloroform, he used chloroform. That is the world's first ether administration on mass scale at the battlefield by Nicolay Pirogov at Aul Salti during the war in Dagestan. That is his device for ether administration, which were widely used in our country just from February 1847. And Pirogov became the founder of two sciences. The first one, surgical or topographical anatomy. He wrote a lot about this, but the main work was an illustrated topographical anatomy of cuts made in 3 directions through a frozen human body. It was in 4 volumes, and he worked in this field for 7 years since 1852 up to 1859. And he was awarded with 3 Demidov's Prize. It was the highest award of the Imperial Academy of Sciences for this research. We have 2 lithographic stones, which was made for impressions of his atlas. They are in the Military Medical Academy, Military Medical Museum in St. Petersburg. That is the first lithographic stone, and that is the second one. And the main idea we are talking about today is military field surgery. And he became a founder of military field surgery in Russia and one of the founders of military field surgery in the world, the Crimean War. This war, it's better to say the Crimean campaign, started firstly between Turkey and Russia. But after overwhelming victory of Russian fleet at Sinop under Admiral Nakhimov, 2 European countries joined Turkey. It's 2 great European countries, Britain and France. And Allied forces moved to Crimea. We understood that forces are not equal. And our admirals decided to sink our ships at the entrance of the Sevastopol Bay. And here you can see masts of our ships, which were sank, just not to allow a British fleet enter this Sevastopol Bay. And since this moment, the great siege of Sevastopol started, and it was for the whole year. This wonderful picture was painted from nature by our great painter of battle pieces, Ivan Aivazovsky. He was a participant of this war. He took part in this war because he was an officer of the Russian army. After the wonderful operations on wounded soldiers and sailors, many of them died because of lack of care after the operation. And when this idea came to the St. Petersburg, this wonderful lady, the Grand Duchess Elena Pavlovna, decided to organize community of Sisters of Mercy, caring for the wounded and sick warriors. Who is that lady? Born Frederica Charlotta Maria, Princess of Württemberg, she received a wonderful education in Paris, and at the age of 14, she was brought to Russia as a bride to the Russian Prince and Grand Duke Mikhail Pavlovich Romanov, the 4th son of our Emperor Paul I. She made a lot for Russia. She organized with her own means many hospitals and schools for children, for girls. And when he knew about the problems in the Crimean battlefield, she decided with her own means to organize this community. And he summoned to her help Nicolay Pirogov. And this they meet at the beginning of November 1854. And she expounded her great plan to arrange organized care for the sick and wounded at the battlefield by women, and invited him to enroll medical personnel and head the entire project. This very day in the evening, she appealed to the patriotic feelings of Russian women and to all those wishing to carry out the highly honorable and difficult duties of the Sisters of Mercy at dressing stations and mobile hospitals at the Crimean battlefield. And these first Sisters of Mercy of the community were from very, very famous family, from very rich families. They were wives, daughters, widows of titular councillors, nobility, landowners, merchants, and officers of the Russian Army and Navy. And they firstly were trained in hospitals, and then they went to the Crimea. Pirogov arrived to the Crimea just on the 10th of November. A community was founded on the 6th of November, and the first detachment of Sisters of Mercy arrived to Sebastopol on the 18th of November. When Pirogov arrived to the Crimea, he met their local women who started care of wounded soldiers just in September after the battle at the river Alma. And among them, Pirogov highly esteemed Dasha or Daria from Sebastopol. This girl of 15, an orphan, came to the battlefield in September, and he helped to care of wounded. He took part in the operations assisting surgeons. She was very, very active in this activity, and in our Russian history, she is esteemed as the first Russian nurse at the battlefield. And in honor of Daria from Sevastopol, the Russian award for outstanding services in nursing were instituted. And you can see this medal and with the word Dasha from Sebastopol, and at the avers you can read in honor of the first Sister of Mercy. Then he met compassionate widows who came to the battlefield from the Moscow and St. Petersburg widow homes. It was for the first time in the history. And then some detachments of nurses came to the Crimea from the community of Elena Pavlovna. And altogether there were 160 nurses at the Crimea. And for example, such a wonderful and famous women joined this community. For example, Praskovia Orlova from the Imperial St. Petersburg Theater, and many, many other from good and famous families. Sisters of Mercy came to the Crimea for the first time on the 18th of November and started her work there. But when Pirogov saw the organization of the medical services, he was very much surprised because it was very bad organized. And he decided to divide Sisters of Mercy into functional groups. The first functional group was sisters sorting out the wounded just after the battle. Then the second group was surgical assistants who assisted surgeons during the operations. Another group was doctors' assistants who helped doctors after surgery and assisted them. And then sister apothecaries, sister housekeepers, and later he organized a special mobile band of sisters to escort the wounded during the long transportation from the battlefield to the continent. It was a very, very difficult job, difficult for men, and for women it was absolutely unusual. These sisters were, as I told you, from a very good families. They knew French, they knew English, and they took care of prisoners of war who were in our hospitals. They wrote letters in French and in English for them, and they sent those letters to their countries, to their families. Among these sisters, Pirogov highly esteemed Ekaterina Bakunina. Who is this sister? She was born in the family of governor of St. Petersburg. And when the community was organized, she wanted to join this community, but her family was not agree with this decision. And Ekaterina Bakunina wrote a letter to the Grand Duchess Elena Pavlovna and wrote, that is quotation, when a daughter of Bakunin, who was governor of St. Petersburg, and a granddaughter of Admiral Ivan Golenishev-Kutuzov wishes to care for the sailors, it seems strange to refuse her. And she was admitted. She came to St. Petersburg. He visited Elena Pavlovna in the court palace, and he stayed with her in her apartments. And for 2 weeks, she studied how to care of wounded, and he visited hospital for 2 weeks. And doctors were very much surprised. What a sister of mercy is this, who drives to the dressings in a royal carriage, because he drive in a royal carriage. She was a wonderful sister. He not only bandaged wounded, she assisted during the operation. She organized the sisters' work at this battlefield. And in 1 month after her arrival to the Crimea, she became a ladies-in-chief on this community. And he was on this position for many years during other wars. For example, Russian-Turkish wars was in 1877-78. And Pirogov esteemed her as the ideal type of sister of mercy. That is the main dressing station in Sebastopol. It was in the dancing hall of Assembly of Nobles in Sebastopol. And a lot of operations were made here. You can see blood on the floor and Pirogov in the center operating on. Altogether, Pirogov performed about 10,000 operations in this year. And he wrote in such words about this, that is quotation. It is possible to carry out 10 big amputations within an hour and 45 minutes, even with the help of unexperienced assistants. If operations are performed simultaneously on 3 tables with the assistance of 15 physicians, it is possible to carry out 90 amputations in 6 hours and 15 minutes, and so a little over 100 amputations in 7 hours. So they work hard in battlefield conditions. That is another picture of this dressing station, a main dressing station in the Assembly of Nobles. You can see a set, Pirogov's set of surgical instruments which he used in his practice. That is another set from the Military Medical Museum now. And I would like to underline one detail. Russian Sisters of Mercy were at the battlefield. They were under bombardment, while British Sisters of Mercy were in Scutari, in Turkey, in Ria, and they have never worked in battlefield condition under bombardment. So our Russian Sisters of Mercy were the first at the battlefield. And that is main Russian priorities in the Crimean War. I'll just told you about the first organized nursing care for the wounded and sick warriors in battlefield conditions at the front line. The second idea, divisions of Sisters of Mercy into several functional groups, and I told you about this before. Then compassionate widows at battlefield, it was for the first time. And then triage of the wounded into 4 groups. The first group consisted of hopelessly sick and deadly wounded people, and they were entrusted to the care of the Sisters of Mercy and priests. The second category included the seriously wounded who needed urgent surgery carried out directly at the emergency dressing station in the building of the Assembly of Nobles at the main dressing station. The third group included the less seriously wounded who were transferred for surgery the next day. And the fourth group was of those who were given immediate treatment and returned to their regiments. It was for the first time at the battlefield conditions. And another idea, division of patients into clean and suppurative. It was made by Pirogov during this campaign. And he put all suppurative warriors into special yard. And he called these yards memento mori, which means remember of death. And I told you about 1,000 operations at the battlefield condition during 1 year. And another interesting idea that every operation were performed under narcosis, chloroform narcosis. Together with a wonderful British scientist, Henry Conner, we studied this question. He organized a special conference in Britain, and he spoke about British Sisters of Mercy, and I spoke about the Russians. And he told in his presentation that only 40% on the British side were operated under narcosis. But on the Russian side, every operation was under narcosis, so 100%. And another wonderful idea, the first bone plastic operations performed and worked out by Nicolay Pirogov, and many of them named after him. And I would like to tell that many Sisters of Mercy died in this campaign because they were under bombardment. And altogether we had 180 Sisters of Mercy, and 17 of them never returned home. They died there at the battlefield, and it is 10%. Many famous figures took part in this campaign. Among them was Leo Tolstoy, second lieutenant of the Russian army, who was a defender of Sebastopol, of the 4th Bastion. Later, he wrote Sebastopol stories. And in these stories, he wrote, this great epopee of the defense of Sebastopol will remain forever as a part of the Russian history. For the hero of it was the Russian people, Leo Tolstoy. But I would like to tell some words about the great figure in the Russian medical history, Florence Nightingale. I will not tell you about her achievements because you know a lot about her, but I would like to underline one idea. Her great achievement was the foundation of nursing education system. She was the person who introduced new specialty, nursing. And she founded the first nursing school. She wrote notes of nursing. That is her great achievement. That is her great deal. Very important for every country all over the world. But during the Crimean War, he worked at the barracks of Scutari in British hospital in Turkey. She was in Ria, and he never visited the Crimean Peninsula. She worked in Turkey in very good and comfortable condition, and that is the difference between the work of our Sisters of Mercy at the battlefields and selfless activity of Florence Nightingale at the Turkish town of Scutari. That is this building where she worked. That is the tower where he stayed. And that is a view on this building in our days. Now it is a Turkish military base. And all wounded in the Crimea, all wounded of the Allied forces, British, French, and Turkish, were transported from the Crimea to the Scutari through the Black Sea. Firstly, they were put on boats, then they were put on these British ships, and in these ships, without medical care, for 2 or 3 days, they were transported to Scutari, to hospital, where the Florence Nightingale and her Sisters of Mercy took care of wounded of Allied forces. This wonderful picture is in the Florence Nightingale Museum. It's a great picture for the whole wall. And that is another picture of Sisters of Mercy. And she is known as Lady with the Lamp because every evening, every night, she checked everything in all the corridors of this great barracks just to see how they are and how to help them. Now it is a military Turkish base, but they have a wonderful museum of Florence Nightingale. For example, they have a lamp. They have a lot of belongings of Florence and some real furniture of her period. But you can see a Turkish flag here on the right, which remind us that that is Turkey, that is not the Crimean Peninsula. That is another wonderful picture from this exposition. And a lot of museums were organized in Britain, but the best Florence Nightingale Museum is in London in the St. Thomas's Hospital. I visited this museum in 1991 for the first time. And I met there Patricia Marbury, Alex Attawell, wonderful colleagues. We became friends. And Pat asked me to organize the lecture on the Russian nurses because they had no idea about Russian nurses at all. They knew nothing about our side. And we organized such a lecture, we organized such exhibition. And then they asked me to write a paper on Russian nursing in the Crimean War. I wrote this paper. It was published in the Journal of the Royal College of Physicians of London, and editors in the introduction wrote, quotation, "For the first time in this country, means in Britain, it will tell a little of the other side of the story, the Russian nurses caring for wounded, which is the subject of this article." So that is the first article about Russian nursing in Britain. And since that time we were friends, we met a lot of times. I met wonderful colleagues, John Kuhl, Dennis Gibbs, and Sir Barry Jackson. And we studied this question. They were very much interested in our history. And one day, Pat asked me to prepare a map of Russian hospitals in the Crimea. And for that, they awarded me with the British Academy grant in 1995. And together with Pat, we prepared this map of the Russian hospitals in the Crimea. And this map was put in the Florence Nightingale Museum at St. Thomas's Hospital. It was opened in 1995. Then I visited this country many times, talking about the Russian nursing. And Sir Barry Jackson organized a wonderful seminar of the Royal Society of Medicine. He invited me to speak on the Russian nurses. And firstly, he spoke about a medical overview. You can read this, Sir Barry Jackson, past President, Royal Society of Medicine, for 30 minutes. And then 45 minutes were given to me for Russian perspective about nursing in Russia. That was the presentation from my university, People's Friendship University of Russia, and discussion was very, very interesting. I told them not only about the Crimea, but about other nurses. For example, Impress Alexandra Fedorovna Romanova and her daughters Tatiana and Olga were caring for the wounded and sick warriors in the Tsar's Village Hospital during the years of the World War I. And you can see here them, that is Impress, that is her daughters. And it is normal for Russian mentality, because many, many women from very good families took part in nursing movement. That is a hospital in the Tsar's Village. And that is nurses. We have a lot of nurses in our military and other hospitals. A lot of nurses of the Russian Red Cross Society took part in many wars. For example, Russian-Turkish War of 1877-78. So you can see this wonderful picture from that very time. But let's go back to Pirogov. After the war, he was disappointed with the organization, very bad organization of medical care at the Crimean campaign. He struggled against this, but without any result, and he decided to retire. He retired at the age of 46. 46, only 46. And he was sent to Odessa and then to Kiev, to the north of Russian Empire, as a curator of education. Curator of education. Then he was in Heidelberg and other towns, but in not far from Odessa, he bought this estate and he paid for this for 10 years. It was very, very expensive. He stayed up to the end of his life in this estate, and he went to other wars from this estate, and for Garibaldi, he traveled from this estate and came back. That is a pharmacy, a building. In one wing of this pharmacy was pharmacy, and in other wing was surgery, where he operated many people who came to him. That is his study, where he wrote his books. And his last book was Diary of an Old Physician. It wasn't finished because he died of cancer in mouth, in months. And it was because he smoked a lot. It was his tobacco pipe made of Karelian birch, a present of one of his patients. That is another picture of this wonderful pipe. But the cancer killed him at the age of 71. He died, and his wife wanted to save his body, and he asked the one professor, Vyvodtsev from St. Petersburg, to emball his body. He came to Vyshnya and he worked for 4 days and he prepared Pirogov's embalmed body. It lies here in the basement of this chapel. The chapel was built later. Firstly, they put Pirogov just underground in a special room, and then his wife built this chapel. Who is Pirogov in the history? Ernst von Bergmann, very important figure in history of aseptics, wrote, "We shall never forget that our German surgery is built at the foundation laid down by the great surgeons of the French Academy, and that it based on the works of the Russian Nicolay Ivanovich Pirogov and on the antiseptic method of English Joseph Lister." He was awarded with many medals and awards. He was a private counselor. That is his award for MD degree and for 20 years of services. That is Order of Saint Anne, the second class, the Order of Saint Anne first class, Saint Vladimir fourth class, Order of Saint Vladimir second class, Saint Stanislav with swords. It's very important with swords, because it means that it was given him for his activity at the battlefield. Swords means at the battlefield. Another Saint Stanislav with swords. And even other countries, other governments awarded him with their medals and other awards. For example, hostile armies, German and French, awarded him with medal on the German side and with cross on the French side, because he represented Red Cross at this war. And now we have the order named after him. It was established just recently in June 2020 by the decree of our president, especially for those physicians who work at a pandemic of COVID. They are heroes. And for them, this Order of Pirogov was established. The Russian Award for Outstanding Services in Public Health and Medicine. And many Russian physicians already received this order. But we have a medal of Luke of the Crimea by the same decree of our president. It is, this medal was instituted specially for nurses. And you can ask me, who is Luke of the Crimea? Valentin Voyno-Yasenetsky. He graduated from medical faculty, then PhD, then he is surgeon, then he became a very great specialist in purulent surgery. He wrote a book on purulent surgery, but later he became a monk. He became an archbishop of the Russian Orthodox Church, and Archbishop Luke of Simferopol and the Crimea. We can see him in this icon, and I pay your attention to these surgical instruments. It's a very rare icon with medical instruments, surgical instruments, because he worked as a surgeon, being an archbishop during the war. He worked as a surgeon during the war. And that is his book on purulent surgery, and that is monument to him. And here you can see the monument to Nicolay Ivanovich Pirogov, the first in Russian monument to a physician. You may be surprised, but the first physician, the first monument to physician in Russia was unveiled in 1897 only, during the 14th International Congress of Physicians. And Rudolf Virch was the president of this Congress. This monument was opened on the 3rd of August. That is a picture of that day. and we are very proud of this monument. It is a wonderful monument, and on the sides of this monument you can find main phrases by Pirogov connected with his activity. And who is Pirogov? Nicolay Ivanovich Pirogov, figure surgeon #1 in Russia, European celebrity, a prominent scientist of the Russian and the world medicine. He is a surgeon, a professor, a public figure, and he is a founder of two sciences, topographical anatomy and military field surgery. And I would like to finish with the words of a prominent Russian surgeon, Christian Gubenet, who took part in the Crimean War together with Pirogov. Let us recall our past. At the Alma, about 1,600 Russian and British wounded soldiers were left lying on the battlefield for 3 or 4 days. How many died there? How many could have been saved if there had been timely help and necessary means? Those who are guilty for that war should have been invited there to those dressing stations in order that their hearts might be filled with a peace, spirit, and accord. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish a great success to our wonderful long Congress, the 47th Congress of our International Society for the History of Medicine. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Our applauses, yeah, we mute our microphones, but applauses for you. Brilliant lecture, I need to say. Fantastic illustrations. Look, we are 55 now online. I have such a feeling like on plenary session of our Congress. Thank you very much, Professor Sorokina, for your contribution. Great.
Thank you for your attention. Your attention is the main idea.
Well,
may I switch off my presentation?
Yeah, let's stop sharing the presentation, because now we open the discussions, and we already have a question in the chat. Just before we start, I need to add, because probably all of you are thinking about our meeting in Riga, and during your lectures, many names, such important names in the history of medicine, what you mentioned, have a direct connection with Riga. First of all, Pirogov himself, because he was in Dorpat University Professors Institute, and he visited Riga quite often, performed here surgery, so it was like an extra ounce for him. So Riga is also a place for Pirogov. You have mentioned Ernst von Bergmann. By the way, for those of you who doesn't know, Ernst von Bergmann born in Riga. And when you will be in Riga and when we will visit the old town, you will see the nice memorial plate, and you will see the monument for Ernst von Bergmann in the museum garden. Similar I can say about Rudolf Virchow, who also was in Riga, and our infectious hospital or leprosarium also at those time, it was his destination, and we have nice evidence, even the picture of that. And of course, Wojna Jesniecki, also directly connected with Riga. So guys, you see, you need to visit Riga if you are historians of medicine. That need to be your pilgrimage destination. Okay, thank you very much again. And can you open, Professor, also chat? Because we have quite long questions. And the first question is from Jimbo. Jimbo, may we ask you to read your question? I think it will be easy, and Professor Sorokina will read it in chat at the same time.
Julius, would be so kind to read me those questions, because I chat,
Jimbo, well, now it's time for your question, please.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Tatiana. I like your presentation very much. Lecture's fantastic. And my question is like regarding to the distance. I know that the lady with the lamp, which is the British one, they just bring the warmness and the hope to the soldiers. But she was very far from the battlefield. She was in the capital city of the Turkish Empire. And you mentioned that the Russian Empire established the first battlefield hospital and to start nursing the patient. The question from me is how long, what is the distance between those hospitals and the battlefield, the front line?
What is the distance between?
The hospitals established by the Russian Empire and the front line.
And the what?
The front line, the battlefield.
The front line?
Yeah.
No distance at all.
No
Distance. Thank you for your question. It was just under bombardment. And on one of slides, you can see the hospital which was crushed. Yes? Because sometimes bomb fall down on the hospital. So it was just in the city, and the city of Sevastopol was bombarded during the whole year. That's why 17 sisters died. Yes? And Bakunina, Ekaterina Bakunina was the last person who left Sebastopol by a pontoon bridge to the just a moment, to the north side when we left this town. So Sisters of Mercy were just under bombardment in hospitals and in their ordinary practice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jimbo, for your question, and thank you for the answer. I see in the chat a lot of compliments for our today's speaker, and I think definitely Joel have comment, because we already last night corresponded with him about the Pirogov, you see. My question before Joel will ask his question is, Professor Sorokina, is any study, has somebody studied, let's say, the common things between Florence Nightingale team and Pirogov Nurses of Mercy, the common and probably difference, more the difference. There are a lot of common things, but in which way they were different, let's say, these two teams of Nurses of Mercy, if we can.
Yes, wonderful question. It was Pat Marbury, the first person who I met at the Florence Nightingale Museum. And after that, I worked together with Sir Barry Jackson a lot, because he was very much interested in this question. And we see the great difference between our teams, as you say, because, for example, who was a member of teams? In our teams, mainly nobility. In Florence Nightingale teams, mainly more simple women. Then they were in rear, we were under bombardment. They came earlier, that is very important for British side, because Florence Nightingale came to Scutari on the 4th of November, but our sisters on the 18th of November, so some days later. Then difference is that everything was regulated and organized on the British side by Florence. It was women. And in British mentality is absolutely impossible. Women looking at the soldiers, it's absolutely impossible. Or even looking after poor people. Her family was against her activity because he would like to care of poor people. It's nonsense from the British mentality. But in our mentality, it's normal. Even impress could do this. That is the difference. But it is not bad. It is different mentalities, different histories. It's just something different. But I like very much that in Britain, they esteem her. She is highly esteemed. A lot of monuments. In London, they have a monument to Florence Nightingale. Her face is on the 20-pound money, yes? Her face, yes? And she is a heroine. They remember her. They even Sisters of Mercy now call them I am Nightingale. You see, once I asked one nurse, who are you? What is your specialty? And she answered me, I am Nightingale. So Nightingale, it is a name for nurse. That is wonderful. That is wonderful. And I like it very much. In our country, we remember our heroes, but I think that in Britain, it is more, I don't know English word. We can see this in more scale.
Thank you very much, Professor Sorokina. I think it's even the topic for another your lecture. It's really very interesting aspect, and thank you that you covered then. So Joel, I promised.
I have one question. Just you were talking about Florence Nightingale. She is a myth. The story that she did something really good in Scutari is not true. The death rate went down only after she left, because she did not pay attention to the sewage. She was taking care of patients, but not of from the public health problem. So they make from her an idol. The museum is beautiful and it's very interesting. But when you compare the two nursing, one was she was with prostitute. She came to Scutari. You were so idle with telling of a law, but I wonder how Pirogov, and it's very interesting, how Pirogov knew about the ITER administration that was just came in Europe in Boston just a year before, 1846. It was August 13, 1846. I'm an anesthesiologist. 1846 is the ITER day. And then within less than a year or less than a few months, where was his source of information?
Yes, the ITHE administration, firstly, were were offered by Morton in the United States, yes?
Yes, yes.
On the 16th of October.
October 16th, yes.
Yes, October 1846. But they didn't follow his experience. Not every surgeon in the United States started to use ITHE administration, just few. During some months, this idea traveled from the United States to Britain. And Britain was the first European country who knew about ITHE administration. Yeah. Yes?
Yes.
And it was at the end of the 1846. They didn't use it widely. And just in some cases, because they wanted to see the reaction of patient during the operation, during the surgery. And step by step, this ITHE anesthesia spread through Europe, from one country to another. And we received this idea from Germany, because when it came for Germany at the beginning of the 1847, the first administration used again Riga. It was in Riga, it was barons. The first administration in the Russian Empire of ITHE narcosis was in Riga by barons. Yeah. Then it was Inozemtsev in Pirogov on the 7th of February 1847.
Yeah.
And 1 week later, Pirogov made the same in St. Petersburg on the 14th of February. So 3 surgeons, Barons and Riga, Inozemtsov in Moscow, and Pirogov in St. Petersburg, performed and used this anesthesia, this administration. But the great role of Pirogov was that he studied this new method on dogs. He tried to introduce either intravenously, yes, in rectal way, in different ways. But he decided that the best way for administration is through lungs. And that's why he offered a mask for this, because the surgeon shouldn't feel this smell. This gas should go only to a patient. And he offered this mask. And then he traveled after that. It was in February 1847. And he traveled through Russia from St. Petersburg to Dagestan in summer 1847. And he stopped in every town and he showed them his mask. That's why very soon in the whole country, in every town where he have been, they started to use this method of anesthesia. And it seems to me that Russia was the first country in which this method they used widely in many towns. And Henry Kohn, I told you about him, invited me to his town, Birmingham, and I stayed in his family for some days when we worked at this question. And he was very much surprised why in Russia it wasn't 100% during the Crimean campaign, but in his country it was only in 30%. And he explained this in such a way that conservative idea to work in a common way, to follow the common way of surgery. They were afraid, they couldn't understand the reaction of patient. That's why they didn't eat widely, only in few cases, only maybe in half of cases. So
I never read the Bulgakov describing he's using ether. He was just using morphine in remote area in Russia. Bulgakov, the great writer. You know him, I'm sure.
Okay. So,
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question and for your comments. It's very interesting, and I think we have a lot of details to study and to join our forces in the investigation of this wonderful field of surgery.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Joel.
Yes, thank you, Joel, also for your comments. You see, we historians of medicine, we are making the icons. I think sometimes we need the icons, and I'm actually not against, but we are making this history. So I think you are always, we are now 58, and I'm really very proud. And it's probably because that we are keeping our time format. We are working strictly 1 hour, and
Yes.
This hour is over. I have a lot of good news about the activities in International Society for the History of Medicine forthcoming, and about the Congress. And I advise you to read the newsletter, the spring newsletter issued like 2 days ago. If some of you not receive, ask your national delegate, and then you will see on the first page the advice of Alfredo, how very easy to reach the Riga. Simple advice, read that. More information about Congress will be on the second page. On the third page, you will read that our first summer course on the history of medicine will take place from July 1st. And our guest speaker for the first course will be a famous professor from the Canada, Jacqueline Duffin. So a lot of news, a lot to read during the Easter holidays. And I know that Europe will have already the Easter this weekend. So let's be safe, let's be healthy, and let's decide until the June 1st about the Riga. And then we will complete the program, and we will meet not on Zoom platform only, but in real. Today we were 58. Let's set a goal, at least 58. I will be waiting in real in Riga. Thank you very much. The lecture was recorded, and next week it will be placed on our Congress webpage. Thank you very much. Happy holidays, and see you for the next lecture. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
All the best to you.
איזה יופי.
See you in real.